Hi,
Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back
welcome.
to another episode of the Reality Podcast. It's
hmm
Layla,
And I'm Tina.
and it's your favorite long distance besties back for
Back at it
more.
again.
And we have a very exciting episode for you guys this week.
hmm
We're going to be talking about creativity, creativity, and just to know how it's really in the market right now. It's really been becoming, like a capital, and that's kind of disrupted things in the creative community. So we're just going to
hmm
dive into that and explore what that looks like for artists and creators all around who are trying to push their art and make a living.
Period.
So yeah. So I guess we could start with first and foremost, the growing demand for art and content rather than art specifically. Because we live in a day and age where we have social media and everything is so accessible, it relates to this constant consumerism of art and really everything, information, whatever. But specifically in the creative field, it really hinders artists and creatives alike because now they are forced to be in a field that they didn't really comply to because they're used to making art that fulfills them or fulfills an audience or just people, but now they have to make content to fulfill an algorithm and meet
Mm.
needs, whether that be from management or just financial stability. So it can be a really taxing place to be in. And a lot of creators have come out and spoken up about their discomfort with that and how it's kind of dysregulated their creative process because they have to function in a way that is almost robotic rather than humane, which is where art is really being poured from. So it's
Exactly.
crazy.
And it's this idea that art has to be consumed for profit. But this idea that you have to constantly post to gain traction monetarily, especially in the system that we live in today with capitalism, it's art is free. Art is
Mm.
supposed to be free and open for everyone to use.
The root really is in capitalism because there's no reason why artists shouldn't be able to make a profit for like the labor that goes into their art, whether
Yes.
that be like painting, statues, whatever, like that's labor
Yeah.
and a lot of work that goes into making a good piece of art. Um, it's just sad that the way that they have to like finance themselves to make a living in the society has to be through social media, even though it does like, it can do wonders for their career, but with the
Yeah.
population being so heavily saturated and the need and demand for content is just higher and higher, it just creates a really uncomfortable position for artists to have to perform instead of just showing up authentically, which is the root of art in itself. It's about authenticity. It's not supposed to be performative. It's supposed to disrupt culture, not curate it and keep it going. And it's not supposed to be a trend. It's just supposed to
Mm.
be an expression and an extension of somebody who's being very vulnerable right now. Like art is a very
Yes.
vulnerable,
Yes.
it's a very vulnerable thing, like
hmm
historically. And so this is really like the first time in a long time that we're seeing artists and creatives have like a place in society financially and just respect wise. um, so now it's kind of like being shoved back into creative spaces for us to, now have to live up to a certain expectation to live and have a
Right.
fruitful career.
The work and time, like you said, the labor that goes into creating art, this idea that they just want them to pump it out like fast fashion is
Mm,
sick.
Teeth. Like even I saw a TikTok the other day and there was this guy talking about Frank Ocean because, especially when you're dealing with artists and musicians specifically, um, not every song is going to sound the same. But
Mm-mm.
labels don't necessarily like that. They want what's trending. They want what's going to hit the
Yes.
charts.
Yes.
So the same thing goes for all art, but specifically talking about music, people want a certain sound. They want things that make them feel good rather than what makes the artist feel good or whatever the artist is producing. So he was basically just talking about how it's really rooted in consumerism for people to just want to consume, consume, consume. But Frank Ocean is the type of artist where it's not always about sound, it's about what he's
No.
saying. Y'all
Yes.
got to listen to what Frank is saying.
Please.
And you will be much more satisfied than having a few quick hits that you're going to add to your playlist because you like the way it sounded and you never listen to them for again because they weren't really saying
Yeah,
anything, you
and it's
know?
this
So
idea that artists work for you. They're just
yeah, they don't.
expressing their creativity and they're allowing you to consume it.
And we
I
should be
feel like
grateful.
literally, when Halle Bailey came out with that song, I think it was called Halo, I believe it was. I'm a big
Yeah, I
man.
think
I
so.
can sick and tired of holding it in. That one, yeah. When she came out with that song, I thought it was beautiful,
It
and I
ate.
loved how it reflected what she was going through in that time in her life. Like with everything going on with the movie, people being racist to her, saying that she shouldn't be Ariel because she's black and all these things going on.
Hmm.
But I heard people saying, "Oh, I don't like this song. It's not what I wanted to hear."
Hmm.
And it again goes to this thing, it's not about what you want to hear, it's what they're expressing. Like
Hmm.
we're
It's what
just
they're making.
allowed to have a peek into their lives and an understanding into their creativity and what it goes into make those songs. She's not making songs for a hit. She's making songs that she loves and hoping for a hit. Not that
Hmm.
those things do not have to be or those things
Synonymous.
are mutually exclusive. Like
Yeah.
they don't have to be the same. And I think that's when it goes into people not seeking real artistry, and we're just getting a lot of these like one hit wonders and things like that because they didn't really take a lot
Industry
of time,
plants.
right? Because they didn't take a lot of time to curate their identity and their spot in the creative space because they're so busy trying to just put out content to keep your attention, when in reality it's all this overconsumption of music. It's just kind of getting muddied over into what it's supposed to be there for. So
Yeah. And it gets so oversaturated. It makes it so hard to like recognize real talent and distinguish it from, a quick source of dopamine because
yes,
there's constant virality and the material isn't what it's not giving what it should.
it's
Like
not
it's really
giving.
not. And I think that is definitely due to like the pressure of like management and labels and things like that to meet a certain expectation. Um,
Hmm.
and numbers. It's really just about people focusing on the analytics side of everything and not really focusing enough on the the art itself. And I
Right.
think that has a lot to do with like social media and the way it's kind of flipped the art world. Like you used to have to like go to a museum to go see
Hmm.
art. Now you can
Yeah.
just type in Leonardo da Vinci and you get access to his life's work. Like
Yeah.
it's not the same. It's not that same experience. You're not getting the same sensory. You're not being like taught about the art. You're not really learning the history behind the art and behind the artist. So it creates like this completely different relationship between the art and the artist, and now it's just supplier and consumer. So it creates a very murky um outlook on things.
Right.
So yeah, and I think that can really hinder people from making art because it's so rooted in consumption, and that's why you have to really take a step back sometimes, just stop looking at the numbers and don't worry about what everybody else is doing because it really shows when it's disingenuine
Right.
or disingenuous.
Hmm.
Um, and just focus on creating more than you're consuming, at least more,
Yes, I love that. Yes, completely.
because I think we all have the capability and capacity to make art and curate our creativity as we see fit. But because we live in a society that is so hell bent on conformity and exclusivity, we are constantly being pushed a certain image of art or an idea of art instead of actually making it. And we're so busy
Right.
consuming what everybody else is doing that we don't even give ourselves time to learn a new skill or pick up a new hobby because we're so focused on everyone else and being like somebody else when
Yes.
art comes from individuality.
Yes. Period.
Like, I feel like a perfect example would be like Dochi. Like,
Yes. Girl, Doja.
love Dochi. She is so talented.
Hmm.
Um, but she like blew up. She recorded her whole path into her creativity and her self of expression and her music and everything. And she followed like this book called The Artist's Way. And I actually had it like saved to my Pinterest board, but never went to go look at it again. But when I found out that was the book she used, kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, might read, whatever. But then all over TikTok shop, is the damn book. Everybody's talking about the book. I'm gonna follow the same path that she did. And I think there's nothing wrong with aspiring to be someone or to be like someone as you see they've reached such a pinnacle of success. But I feel like we're missing the plot. Y'all
Yeah,
are just trying to
completely.
reheat her nachos, and you need to be making like your own Chipotle bowl.
Yes, please.
Like we need to focus on the fact that Dochi is where Dochi is because she stayed true to herself.
Yes, not
She
because
was
she read a
able,
book.
exactly, not because she read a book. That the book was just a tool, it was an aid to what was already present.
Yes,
And it just helped her transmute her repression to expression so that way she could actually create something meaningful for her because she explained her own experiences with like labels wanting her to produce a certain sound to get clicks, and she had the opportunity. You see like there's like a rise and fall in her career, and she ultimately denied it and went back to herself because she knew that she could reach a point in success while being true to
herself.
herself, and that was more
Agreed.
important to her. And look at where she is
Period.
now.
Exactly.
So before you go buy that, book off of TikTok shop, just take a moment to think about where you want to be and what you actually want from your career and your creativity. And, take a moment to accept that it doesn't have to look exactly like somebody else's.
Exactly. Especially with young people, it kind of their creativity gets lost in the sauce.
It's very vulnerable, especially to like have somebody else's idea of what creativity looks like infringed upon you at such a young age all the
Yes.
time. Um, there's actually this article. It came out in about December 2022 from the University of Sydney, all the way in Australia. Hopefully we have Australian listeners one day. My Australian
Period.
accent's terrible. Anyways, but it briefly talked about late stage. Well, the whole article is about late stage capitalism, but it
Hmm.
briefly talked about influencing and how it gives you access to 24/7 consumerism because
Yes.
you can go on your phone whenever you want. You can open TikTok whenever you want. And not only are you bombarded with influencers promoting you something, but now we have like TikTok Shop who is shoving things down your throat. And
Yes.
every time you swipe, it's an ad. It gets ridiculous. So I just want to pull a quote real quick
Hmm.
discussing the nature of influencing. Just because the root of influencing ultimately does rely on capitalism. It relies on consumers, and they try to build this network of an audience, which ultimately becomes really exploitive because they're so distant from their audience.
Hmm.
And you're just reaping those benefits. You never lose anything from being true to yourself. And that is exactly what capitalism wants from you when they're placing these influencers in your face on your screen. They want you to aspire to aspire to be somebody, and it just strays you further and further away from your own potential and your own light, which is like blinding to other people, and it's right in front of
Exactly.
you. It's just waiting for
Exactly.
you to actually step into it instead of hiding behind the mask of somebody else. So
Right.
yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. It was
Hmm.
specifically a critic. It was coined in 1991, the term late capitalism, because there's different stages of capitalism. And capitalism, to briefly summarize, and just a little discretion, this is not this is not a history class. I'm just talking about my idea of capitalism. But
Hmm.
capitalism can be defined basically as an individual or company having private ownership of resources and profiting off of that, off of the backs of cheap labor, basically.
Hmm.
And there's different stages of capitalism. So this article specifically talked about late capitalism,
Hmm.
and there's different stages of capitalism. So this article specifically talked about late capitalism, and the literary critic Frederick Jameson, and I quote in Jameson's account, late capitalism is characterized by a globalized post-industrial economy where everything, not just material resources and products, but also immaterial dimensions such as arts and lifestyle activities becomes commodified and consumable. So
Yes.
I just wanted to point that out because it's like that's kind of like a different level of
Mhm.
capitalism and consumerism, like it's like not only are we not safe in stores and in marketplaces, but now we're not safe in places that we once found solace in, like art and music and just regular lifestyle. We literally have
Yes.
influencers who are doing grocery hauls.
Yes.
What the fuck? Like, what? Like, not even the grocery store is safe. It's
Yes.
ridiculous. And even we have like lifestyle influencers, like we've managed to commodify and just make content out of the way we live our lives. And there's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that inherently. It's just about the byproduct of that, which is exploitation of consumers.
Yes. Instead of taking inspiration from others, we're just like trying to be carbon copies of each other.
Yeah.
And
And that's a really slippery slope,
very.
especially because like the lifestyle that they're glamorizing is not meant to be attainable. And
Mm-mm.
that's what makes it so dangerous. You will go broke trying to be like your favorite influencer, I
Yeah,
promise you.
you will.
The way that influencing is set up with the ridiculous amount of PR packages and just free stuff and brand trips that these people are going on,
Mm-hmm.
the average person is just not going to accumulate the amount of things that they have that they're flaunting to sell to you.
I
Like
mean,
at the end of the day,
yeah.
like that's really what it is.
At the beginning
It's a
of the video,
business.
they'll be like, I need this in my life. If when I don't even know what
Mm,
life was before I had this object. When you
hmm.
have like
They're selling it.
60
I gotta give
more,
it to
you
them.
have, yeah, they're selling it. They definitely are, but at what cost?
Yeah, at
Social
our
cost,
cost. Yeah,
emotional
it's all about
cost.
currency. Yeah,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
actual cost too.
Yeah. Yeah, your pockets are
The
hurting.
pockets of the consumers. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
hurting. So yeah, I just think we need to step away from the social media influencing and take a moment to think about what it is that will enhance your creative journey and expand your life so that way you can step into creativity and have a viable product or output from that. Because it doesn't have to be linear, it doesn't have to result in anything really. It's just a means of tapping in with yourself. Because another byproduct of this consumerist mindset with creativity is thinking that it has to result in something. Like creativity is not a linear pathway, and it doesn't have to be something that you necessarily profit off of. It's really just a connection to yourself to further understand yourself. So that way you can just have
Hmm.
like access to like some of the deepest parts of your mind, really. Like creativity will save you. Like
Yes.
sometimes it really takes picking up that pen and paper and putting your words to emotion and expressing that. So you just get it out of your system. It's not always about
Yes.
something that you have to share with a bunch of people or something that you have to profit off of. It's really just about that connection with yourself. And whatever comes from that comes from that. And it deserves to be, whatever gift you have, if you'd like to share it and grace our For You pages, then great. But
Please.
I wouldn't focus so much on like what you are necessarily getting from it or what you think you should get from it because
Right.
you what you see other people getting from it.
Hmm. Believing in yourself and believing in your content and believing that the right people will see what you have to offer. Because this
Definitely.
idea that, okay, I need to post this or do this so I can get this type of feedback because that's what so and so does, or that's what I think works because that's what I see. It's just continuing to feed into that pipeline. But instead, when you continue to stand on what you want to do, regardless of how many views it has, regardless of how perfect it is to you, just the fact that it's authentic within itself is extremely important, and the creative space needs it badly.
Needs it. And I like that you pointed out the point about it having to be perfect because I think a lot of artists and just people in general get really caught up in this perfectionist cycle to the point where it ultimately inhibits them from making any real change or making any strive in their creative journey because they are afraid that it's going to be mediocre or they're
Mm-hmm.
worried about it being perfect. So they're not letting themselves just take steps forward into becoming perfect or just
Right.
completely nullifying the idea of perfectionism altogether because ultimately it gets in the way.
It
There is
does.
no perfect, we all want to produce good things and we want to produce things that people enjoy, but ultimately it's really just about being proud of what you make and what you have to offer. It's not about
Exactly.
reaching someone else's idea of perfection, because that's really what perfection is rooted in. It's rooted in approval and validation. And people think, oh, if you got a brand deal and you've got it, or oh, if you have this many views, this many likes, then that means you've made it. No, that's not what that means.
Exactly.
There are a lot of people who have a lot of money, a lot of views, and they are suffering mentally because they are actually
Yes.
so devoid of creativity because they put themselves in a position where they make content 10 times over and just recycle and repackage it instead of working on whatever it is to fuel themselves creatively so that they can express themselves in a
Hmm.
healthy manner and not just hope for a good click or
Yeah.
something.
But I think also because we live in a society that's we're constantly having to be seen. Like if you think about it, a lot of people like say like even like 20 years ago, it wasn't as accessible to always see your face, how you
Mm,
look, what you're like, what you don't like about yourself. So I think that's where also the perfectionism comes into play as well, because you think you're supposed to be viewed a certain way or you're supposed to look a certain way because you put so much emphasis on your appearance or your content because you're comparing it to other people. So it's kind of like that comparison is a thief of joy type thing
yeah,
because
definitely.
your art is unique to you and you don't have to compare it to anybody else because that's where
Yeah.
that kind of perfectionism is also coming from.
And it's ridiculous the artists even have to perform in the first place because,
Mhm.
like, isn't that what the artist supposed to do? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just the vessel who made this. This is just a byproduct of what I did. I'm not the star of the show here, the artist. But it is
exactly.
ridiculous that artists are put under such scrutiny to look a certain way or behave a certain way, or now they have to have a
Yeah.
certain aesthetic. It's so
I
performative.
mean, if you look at Hollywood within itself, you can see the stages you're going through. You can type in, say, just Ariana Grande.
She lived
You
a lot
will
of lives.
see like seven different versions of this girl.
You
Like
see
I
seven different
swear
girls.
too. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, and you can just of music she's in, and compare that to her appearance during that era, and
Mm.
how remember she had her little black scent era.
Blackiana.
Hmm. And you can kind of even just look at her music during that era, and then now you
It
see
was very different.
very different,
Very
very
different.
different because she was popping and locking on the music videos, and now she's
Hmm.
back to that
Now
little foot
she
ponytail, and she's just oh so cutesy. I've never done
can't
anything. I
move.
just am so
So
small.
innocent. Yeah.
I'm just so little. I
I
can't.
know. Even that, like, I
So
don't know if that was like her glindification that like influenced her in that way, like her whole appearance, her voice, everything. I don't know.
I think this is why artists go through a lot of like drug use problems and things like that because the art is draining them. What is something that used to be a creative space for them to unleash is now something that they're now a slave to. Because if you think about
Mm,
it, people are constantly critiquing their artistry, their appearance, everything they do when art is up to the eye of the beholder. Like it's art was something you could look at and kind of get a different perspective than somebody else completely. You can listen
mhm.
to a song, gain a whole different understanding than someone else. It's this idea of uniformity, or this song is bad, so it has to be bad in general for
For
everyone.
everybody.
You
Yeah,
know what I
everyone else that
mean?
looks like it. Yeah.
So essentially people will look at their favorite artists or favorite streamers and they'll see them listening to music and gain that opinion of their favorite streamer
Just because they did it.
just
Yeah,
because it's their favorite streamer, not because they even have anything to critique the song about. So
exactly.
I think that's also the issue.
And I like that point about art being about perspective because that's exactly what it's supposed to bring. Like there was a time you would go to a museum and you just look at the painting until you felt something, or like, what does this painting make you feel? What does this
Exactly.
sculpture make you think about? It's supposed to bring like a different idea to you, and then you discuss it with other people. Okay, well, I thought about it this way. What did you think about it as? But
Exactly.
now everything is so flat and two-dimensional, and it's just so heavily oversaturated that it's so hard for any like real art to make its way through.
Yeah,
But just know we see you, artists. We
we
do.
do.
And the uniformity is another just sad point to see a lot of people struggling with and just having to conform to this idea of what art looks like or they're gonna have to consume. Like it's really like fight or flight out here, like kill or be killed.
Literally.
If you're not making money or content, then you're not going to be able to make art and express yourself. So I think a lot of people have taken that way as like kind of a scapegoat, as like trying to just get on their feet or whatever it may be, because a lot of people do want to just live a life where they can express themselves creatively and sustain themselves that way. Like Kendrick Lamar, he has like some songs. There's like a drastic difference in like his music from when he was first coming out to like as he got more comfortable and he was going through this stage of kind of, I guess like it's a whole thing. Like there's a deep
Hmm.
analysis behind all of
Hmm.
it. But his music reflected like his life growing up. And as he shifted into this place of sovereignty and he saw all the people that he was forced to leave behind, he realized he couldn't save everybody. And he just kind of lost touch with himself. And it
Yeah.
reflected in his art. And now he found himself just kind of making quick things to try and soothe himself, but also still trying to make a profit. And he felt trapped because it's like something that you once went to for comfort or for solace or for expression is now being dangled over your head to make sure that you have your bills paid and you take care of your family because now
Yep.
you're like the breadwinner. So it just creates a whole loop of coming up and coming down and facing yourself, really, because honestly that's what art forces you to do. So if you're not making art that's true to you, who are you facing? You're
Yeah.
just trying to meet a certain criteria or a quota so that way you'll be validated, but you're being invalidated by yourself and you're constantly going through
Exactly.
this look in the mirror of questioning who you are and being forced to confront who you are, because like when you're not in alignment with what you need to do creatively, especially, it's very loud. Like you hear it
Hmm.
from your body, you hear it from your mind. Like it's very apparent when you're not doing things that fulfill you,
Yes.
emotionally, mentally, whatever, especially creatively. So
Hmm.
it's really, that's why Hollywood is like kind of it's like so weird, or just
Hmm.
society. I don't really blame specifically Hollywood, but just capitalism in general, to put people in a place of, what's a good word? Like just to put you in this place of despair,
Hmm.
because it's dangled this idea of success in front of you when that's not what everybody's ideas of success is.
No.
But ultimately, you need to sustain yourself. So it's like trying to push you into becoming this type of artist when it's really straying you away from the artist that you really want to be.
Right.
So
And I think
I
it's
don't know.
important to understand too that art is inherent to you. It's not
Mhm.
something that you need to get from outside of you. It's just something you have to curate and work on within yourself.
Yeah, it
So,
comes from you.
yes, it's not something that should be based on the opinion of others, based on how society views it, because art is supposed to disrupt culture. It's supposed to stop you in your tracks. It's supposed to make you think. It's supposed to give something and express itself authentically for that time. So it's kind of sad to hear that, a lot of artists stray away from their true selves but it's nice to see that they often find their way back.
Yeah, definitely.
So
It's nice to
it's
see
like
that they're
a
like self-aware enough to come back to
exactly.
themselves. I think that's kind of like I was saying, what art forces you to do. So it's nice that it happens at a nice pace for them and they can actually come back to themselves and express themselves how they wanted to. Um, and I think
Mm-hmm.
just kind of with that, it comes from showing up, just showing up for yourself first and just coming even when you don't feel like it, to
Mm-hmm.
just to make strides, and to push
Yes.
yourself to be better. Even if you're
Mm-hmm.
not really happy with what you're doing, like still show up and get to a point where you feel incredibly happy after walking away from what you just did. Or sometimes it's okay
Exactly.
to like, stumble and fall and trip over
Exactly.
yourself when you're in the process of making things. Like we forget that it's a journey and it's not always supposed to be this one and done thing that you're just so good at. Like it's just about showing up and being consistent and putting yourself to the test and proving yourself wrong, like whatever preconceived
Exactly.
notions or doubts that you had about yourself, really put them to the test. I saw another chick talk about this too, this girl, she's talking about doubt and just about how that's actually like a really loud determining force within you
Mm-hmm.
is doubt, because it pushes you to now prove yourself wrong or prove things to yourself first, not to anybody else. And it
Exactly.
forces motion. Like with that doubt
Hmm.
comes motion. Like, okay, if I'm really this concerned about something, or if I really have this much fear towards something, use that as a tool to point you in the direction of what you need to do, not what you need to run away from. So
Exactly.
ultimately, just coming back to yourself and showing up anyways, that is truly what makes you remarkable as an artist and what makes you fearless as a person.
Period.
Period. Just stop chasing this imaginary idea of perfection, because the pursuit of perfection, similar to the pursuit of beauty, as we talked about, will not only leave your pockets dry, but your mind empty
Yes.
and your soul barren. So
Period.
just be true to yourself, you know?
And don't fear failure. Open
Mhm.
it welcomely, and because failure is just another obstacle in your way, just like it will always be obstacle. But it's for you to overcome. It's not for you to just stand in those tracks, because there's always going to be a door open for you, because one closed door, if you turn around, there's like three different open ones. Yeah.
Yeah, do not allow fear to make you complacent.
Mm-mm.
It's supposed to be a force that moves
To
you.
drive you forward.
Exactly. Only
Hmm.
forward motion here. Like
Period.
Newton said.
Hmm. And an object
Okay.
at rest stays at what?
At
Rest.
rest
Hmm.
until disrupted by another force. So,
Period.
an unbalanced force. Okay.
Period. Hello.
So, yeah. I'll just leave you guys with a little tea quote here. And
Hmm.
this is actually kind of nice. It's kind of like what we talked about today. So it says, the creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn. I think that's actually really symbolic as to what we talked about. But I'm
Very.
gonna let y'all chew on that and digest that for yourselves, you know. Let that creativity spark for itself. So
Hmm.
thank you guys so much for listening.
Yes.
And we'll see you back here next week.
Yes. Have a good day, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.